Good morning, everyone. Um, it's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you guys today. Um, really excited to, just take you through kind of startup management. How do you go from your ideas to impact, and really just sharing kind of what my journey has been like getting here, some of the mistakes I've made. We'll just get into the agenda. Um, Let me know if my screen freezes at any point. I'm just kind of sharing between them. But we have a couple things this today to go through. Um, we have our introduction, just telling you a little bit more about myself, my journey, where I started, what I'm doing now, and why I think this is an extremely important topic for us to cover. What are the foundational entrepreneurial mindsets? And I can say God is very, very good. The um, devotion is exactly what we will be basing that off of, and how you think about embracing opportunities and your resilience. We'll speak a little bit about business model development. How do you create a vision and validate it so that you're not trying to eat the elephant in one sitting, but you make sure that you have a plan and a way to do that. We'll talk about operations and execution. So how do you implement and get things done? Jacob is already well on his way and is following some of the key things and items that are important there. So that was awesome to hear. Funding and financial management. How are we being frugal and realistic? How are we keeping track of the money? It's very, very difficult to make it and quite easy to spend it. And then getting into growth and scale. And I think that the main idea that we'll be speaking about there is really just product market fit. And we'll go ahead and define that and see what that means. Awesome. So, hi everyone. I'm Gitari Tirima. I am a three-time founder. And yeah, I started my journey, I think 11 years ago, um, doing a very similar thing to what Jacob is doing, selling clothes. And over the years, getting more involved in the technology aspect, learning to specialize and focus on product development and product management, all the way to kind of founding Fingo with a couple of friends trying to solve the problem of bank access for young Africans, and as that's scaling, also looking at extending my journey with a new company called Sparkment. And who would I say I am? I'm just a curious guy who enjoys trying to solve big problems, trying to make an impact and to generate lasting value. But it always started small, and we'll talk about that. What am I currently working on? Right now, I'm working on scaling Fingo. I think some of you guys are users or have seen it. It's been definitely quite the journey, and there's still a lot more to do and a lot more to go. But we'll use a lot of that, or I'll be using a lot of that as examples for these different topics. I have a side project called Harmony AI. So if any of you guys are interested in personality tests and kind of understanding yourself better, how you can move through the world, um, go give that a check. Um, and then, yeah, just exploring how we can now with technology, AI, and where the world is moving, how to develop products, test them, and grow them with a company called Sparkmint. And yeah, why this topic is so important to me is I believe in Africa and in Kenya specifically, we are very entrepreneurial. We are definitely, I think, at the top of the kind of bell curve or the curve when it comes to how we set out to go and get things done and how to create value. I also believe that it is, I think, one of the most fruitful ways to create value rather than just getting a job. Not that that's something that should be looked down on. I think it's just a really, really admirable thing to do, as much as it is difficult. And I've been doing this for around 10 years. And yeah, just want to share some of my mistakes, some of my lessons, and give frameworks to inspire you guys to start learning by doing, although I think many of you guys are already doing. So some of the stuff won't be new, but it'll just be a emphasis on what you already know. Right. So we can get started um, with the entrepreneurial mindset. What is this? And um, what are the essentials here? I think the first thing is seeing problems as opportunities. This is something that was actually touched upon in some way in the devotion, where Paul actually gave this great view of this, how he counts his weaknesses as his strengths. There is a mindset that in my weakness, or in the problems, there is an opportunity. Um, as an entrepreneur, imperative for you to really spot the gaps, see where the issues lie, and try and solve those. Find that gap in the market. Like for Fingo, what we chose to look at is it took us quite a long time as individuals to get a bank account, and the way we were treated was not very positive. Even when we first founded the company, one of the prominent banks in the country held our funds and then said that we are no longer allowed to do business with them. And we saw that with the population growth that we have, we're adding in Kenya, I think 1.2 million people turning 18 a year. What does the next 5, 10, 20 years look like for these young people trying to get these services? And we said, okay, this is an opportunity. It's a problem that we faced, and I think it's important to find a problem that's personal to start, and then how can we solve this problem? I think the other thing is embracing your first time mistakes. Um, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And it's important to learn how to really just adapt quickly to feedback, to challenges that arise as you engage. And really focus on your customers. I will say this multiple times, but your customer and understanding them, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and why they want to interact with your product and why the problem is a problem for them is extremely important. There are several first-time mistakes that I've made in my journey, from uh, maybe lacking the humility to listen, and building features that people don't really need and the customers don't use, to um, not setting limits on cards and spending far too much money on certain services, to even bottling it with investors on meetings and on calls, really just not saying the right thing at the right time. And the thing is, you will make several mistakes in the journey up into Fingo. There's so many business ideas, so many things that I have invested time and effort and energy in that maybe didn't lead to commercial success. But with every time you make that mistake, I think viewing it as an opportunity to learn, really to take the time to reflect and internalize why. There's an exercise, and this is, I think, a very important exercise for people to go through, and that's the five whys. So when something happens, ask why. What was the reason? And then ask why again. and keep going down that list 5 times, and normally you'll have gotten to the root of the problem, the crux of the issue. And it's rarely that people, even yourself, are incapable. It's rarely that you don't have the right passion or drive to do it. It's normally a either context thing or a skill issue, and this is the process of developing those skills. Apart from or moving on next is being relentlessly resilient. Um, I would say entrepreneurship is not for everyone. There is an unbelievable amount of uncertainty. There are definitely walls and challenges that you'll need to climb. I think for Fingo, an example is we built our MVP. We got our first couple of customers, signed our banking partner, and started developing the full app. Uh, and we'll talk about what an MVP is later. I think some of you already know that. And what happened after that is we got stuck for 1 year, um, not being able to launch because we needed regulatory approval. Um, we also had times where the day before the launch, we were testing some things, and there was a bug in the app that meant that people couldn't actually finish the sign up journey. And instead of kind of giving up or quitting at that point, it's really tying yourself back to that mindset of quieting the noise. Why am I here? What am I trying to do? And keep pushing. I do think there is always a time to call it quits if something isn't working. However, you would be so surprised to know what your limits are when you keep pushing, when you keep striving for a goal. The other one is the growth mindset. Um, Again, touching back on what the devotion spoke about and what was written in Romans. I think it's 12, 2 and 3 is be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you are able to test what is that good and pleasing and perfect will of God. Um, that section of be transformed by the renewing of your mind is for me such an important message, an important image. The fact that we have been given this opportunity, we've been given the capacity to continually renew our mind, continually refresh our perspective, take in new experiences, take in new data, and keep dating and changing. It is definitely a painful process most of the time, where what you believed, what you held true at the time, is changed or updated. But just like a profile picture, just like a database, that data is only there when it's there. And if something new comes in, it is imperative and critical for you to um, be able to change and to say, I will take that next step to grow. I'll take that next step to push. So with each failure, as we like to call it, that's really just a feedback, and a feedback loop. So the more you do, the more you'll fail. The more you fail, depending on your mindset and how you choose to react and receive that information, you can grow exponentially, even in a very short period of time. Um, Yeah, that's kind of it on the entrepreneurial mindset and how we end up really thinking about where we're how to attack these problems and challenges. There are some resources I think I'll share with the leaders on some books, some YouTube channels, some different places that you guys can go and really get into the weeds of how this is done and you can employ these tools and become skillful in having this mindset. Um, Next, we'll go on to business model development. Um, So to execute a great strategy means nothing without kind of, oh, sorry. Yeah. So developing your business model and validating it. It is, I think, most importantly, uh, imp- most critically important to have a very big grand vision for yourself and for the company. Um, there's nothing that we've been given that we're meant to do that is limited by even our current capacity. Um, for Fingo, we had a dream of a Pan-African neobank reaching millions. In the next, I think it's 25 years from now, one third of every young person, or one two-thirds of every young people will be in Africa. That's going to be over 1.5 billion people. Uh, these people will need financial services. They will need financial education. They will need a way to keep and generate their wealth. And we want one third of every young African to be a Fingo customer. And that's how we set up everything that we do. We have this goal that's there. It's, yes, far away, and it's lofty and it sounds preposterous, but each moment and each decision we're making is how do we get closer to that point? But after you have that big grand vision, we had to break down that vision into a core hypothesis. So what are we doing when we're kind of breaking this down? We're asking ourselves really important questions that we can then use to validate, run these small experiments. And that's something like in Fingo, will young people trust a digital-only bank? What are the features that these people need the most? How will we make money? Is it on transaction fees? Is it on float interest? And instead of kind of saying, oh, we're going to go and build this thing, we're going to go build a rocket and go to the moon, uh, we started testing each of these small little different pieces. So from the customer need, what is it that they need? They need access to the bank very quickly and easily. Um, and how do we test that? Can we make a fully digital sign-up that passes both the regulatory standards, but also gives us the ease and the kind of flow that something like signing up to a social media account would give. Um, with the pricing, what are the biggest pain points? What are the biggest complaints on pricing in the market? Um, how can we manage that issue while still making money? How do we then need to scale from that? Um, and that kind of takes us into uh, how we then run these small experiments. So we built an MVP app. What does MVP stand for? It's the minimum viable product. And that's the textbook definition. I think the real world definition of an MVP is the most basic form of the product of service that you want to give that somebody would be willing to engage with, pay for, and using that to then measure these assumptions. Like people will want to trust this. People have this need, have this problem. And the cycle or the feedback loop that we look is at is you build or you serve or you do something, you measure, and then you learn from that. And the building, I think, is relatively straightforward. That's just how do we um, do the thing that we want to do, whether that's building a website for someone like Jacob, that's going and getting stock and beginning to sell to people in the area. For something like Harmony, which is a different project that I've been working on with one of my co-founders, is how do we get people to answer questions quickly about these different temperaments, about their career, and ingest that information in a smart and easy way. And we ended up actually discovering like we can make an AI podcast for that. Um, and that's something that people are really used to kind of consuming content in that way, much more than reading. And then the measure. I think the measure is really a key component that is not glamorous. It is not per se fun all the time. And as things go on further and further, can become more confusing and muddied. In the measuring, we talk about things called metrics. Uh, and we have good metrics, and we have what we call vanity metrics. Um, a good metric is, like in the case of Fingo, um, what is the retention? So, how many times does a new user come, um, finish doing their sign up, do a transaction, and then within a week come back and do another transaction? Um, that's a good metric. A vanity metric, something that's just there to stroke your ego and doesn't actually help you push your business, might seem important, but is quite nefarious under its skin. And that's something like website visits or how many people are on your waiting list. These are things that have been used by several people, us included, and me included, thinking, oh, if I get 10,000 people on my website in a day, or I have a waiting list of 100,000 people, my business is doing well. But the issue is when you're measuring those things, uh, what are you learning from it? How does that actually meet your assumption? And kind of steering clear of those and finding the core things that make a difference to your business while you're trying to test these assumptions. And measuring, there's so many tools we have now to measure. You can measure um, using web analytic tools. You can measure using surveys, so qualitative and quantitative information. And as you're building, it's very, very important to remember this is what we're building and this is why we're how we're going to measure it. And once you're done building and you've measured, so say a 2 week test. I'll use Jacob because he's the only one I really know about in the cohort who's doing something. But from the time I go and get my stock to the time of my first order, uh, what was that time? How long did it take me? That will help us now get into the really developing more the business model, understanding how the things that I've thought are true in my Excel sheet and how they relate to the real world. Or um, out of every 10 sales, how many are returned or how many customers ask for a return? These are really the important things for us to do and to kind of execute as we go from, I think, that standard textbook. I have a project plan. I have a um, kind of profit and loss model, my revenue model. I have my costs model. To okay, we're now in the real world. And once you've done that measuring, you take time to stop, really just clear your mind, silence the noise, and look at the data and the facts that you've learned, the things that you've picked up. So, oh, after every 10 orders, five are returns. Okay, that's something that needs to be updated in our model on how we do things because that means either the way the clothes are being presented is not right, either the price means that the users are not happy with the quality that they're getting, or maybe I just have the wrong customers and I need to try and test with a different group of people. And this is imperative before you scale. before you start putting a bunch of resources into the company, before you start hiring, uh, looking for significant investment as well. These are the kind of things that you want to tick off in the box, saying, okay, I understand my customer, I understand my business, and more importantly, I understand how to make changes to my business that bring positive results. Um, Fourth thing here is customer feedback. Customer feedback is gold. Talking to your users early and constantly is something that we've been doing Fingo, and I hope to take into all the businesses that I do. There was a TED talk I was listening to a few months ago about what do the world's best product teams do, and the world's best businesses, how do they start and grow and beat their competition? And this lady is an advisor who goes to all sorts of companies, whether it's like really small startups in Mexico, in the US, or big companies like General Electric. And there was a set of company or a company that was going to build design software for architects. And the first thing that this company did is before putting together an awesome plan, a deck, a strategy, and costs and all these other things, they went and spent, I think it was a month or 2 months with architects in their office, at the job site, in client meetings. And that's really understanding who is this person and who are they? What are they trying to do? How do they feel about the world? How do they feel about the problem? Why is this a problem for them? Um, the more you have understanding of what people want, how they think, the more time you'll save yourself, the more pain and headache you'll also save yourself when it gets into actually pushing and building. So I know this is on the business model side, not much of the textbook. Write a business plan, uh, write a profit loss statement. I think those are things that are um, widely available, and you can find how to do those things. But really, how do you tie this theoretical idea and tie it to reality and find a way to have a process to update, change, review, and continue pushing forward. It's very difficult when the idea in your head and reality are not meeting. That's really what causes a lot of pain. And for me as a founder, there's so many ideas or thoughts that I had. Oh, if we just kind of get 100 customers a day, then within a year, 2 years, we'll be breaking even. And that was an assumption. We got to that. In fact, we got to 1,000 customers a day. And we realized that's actually not enough. That is a part of it, but how are these users transacting? How are they relating to their friends on the platform? How are they utilizing the plethora of different products that we have available? And seeing that, oh, a lot of them didn't know that you could do interest earning savings on money market. They didn't know that you could pay your M-Pesa pay bills. That they didn't know that we had virtual cards that have discounts that you can buy for things like Netflix and Spotify. So, you have to keep going deeper on each step and on each level. Awesome. I think we can get into operation and execution insights. When we were starting off, I think we had a team of 5 people. So three co-founders and two engineers. And that was it for the first 6 to 8 months of the company. The very first Fingo application, which I thank God none of you will ever have to see, was built by myself and our CTO. in 30 days in our parents' attic, just hacking away. And what it is our ideas are important. They're a gift, but without execution, without constant movement, uh, they're meaningless. There's so many ideas in this world, and every time a new startup comes up, or every time a new business comes up, you'll hear one of your friends or one of your uncles say, "Yeah, like 5 years ago, I thought about this thing. I could have done this thing. It's not that hard." But yeah, just that bias for action. And I think the pattern that you can put in is kinesis. Again, tying back to that uh, devotion that was really awesome is uh, the more ideas you have, they can start to spiral, to grow, and then you allow either doubt or hubris or all these other things to come in. Just saying, okay, this is the idea I had. Let me quiet all the noise and execute. Do one thing. Get that incremental 10 shilling or 1 shilling deposit in to keep growing, to keep going further, to keep going forward. Um, yeah, the other thing is in operation and execution, doing things that don't scale. This is for your early part. So as you're doing these kind of MVPs, you're testing and validating your ideas. It's not yet time to optimize. Um, Optimization comes when you have understanding. One of the things that we did that doesn't scale is we would batch our test users into cohorts. So that's 10, 20, 30 people at a time. And we wouldn't let anybody sign up and finish their sign up until they came in to our office at the time. We wouldn't interfere with the process. We'd have some people to help, but we really wanted to see what are their reactions. Where do they get stuck? What do they love? What do they hate? What do they understand? If we were doing that today, we're currently at around 120,000 accounts. Um, I would have no sleep and I would not be able to do my job. But in those early stages, really doing those things that don't seem like you can keep replicating over time. If that's for someone like Jacob, who's selling these clothes, um, that's actually hand delivering a couple of these items, letting them try it on, asking if you can take some pictures, what they feel, what they think about it, what process of ordering these clothes or what kind of clothes are important. That's something that um, when the business is fully operational and running, you don't have time for, and nor should you be doing. But in those early times, what are the most critical actions that you or your business or your company need to master for you to then grow and focus on external issues or competition or even just how to scale. Uh, but these doing things early is really, really important. One of the people who I really listen to quite a bit is called Paul Graham. He's been in Silicon Valley startups for a very long time, and he has a blog. And he gave the example that surprisingly good customer service, especially in the early stages, is one of the best ways to learn about your users. Some of the things that we also did is before we hired a customer support team, um, each of the founders as well as the engineers, we took turns, either a couple hours every day, 2 to 3 hours, in a cyclical manner to do customer support, to answer everybody's angry questions, abusing you for things that maybe you made a mistake on or weren't even in your control. And that gave us a really deep understanding of what was important. Because what I thought was important to our users uh, might not actually have, it wasn't really what I thought it was. It was how are the transaction speeds? What are the transaction fees? Even if they're high, can I see them? Do I understand where my money's going? Am I able to track my spending over time? Those are the things that you learn to pick up, and that then influences how you move in the future. Um, the next thing is focus. Uh, Focus, I would say, is probably one of the top three things that kills most entrepreneurs, kills most businesses, and really as a way of very secretly and silently draining your resources, whether that's your time, your equity, or relationships, way. So avoiding distractions that don't drive growth is quite a painful and very cognitive process. Some of the things that we did that really stole and changed our focus was trying to build too many products at once, and trying to serve a different product segment or just different customer segment before we figured out our primary customer. And what that meant is the quality of some of the products, of the processes that we had really suffered, and we lost some of the core users, some of the people who are the lifeblood of our company. Um, and those other projects, those other ideas that we were trying to develop and push ended up being held back. And now you have this kind of ping pong effect where you're going from this thing to that thing, then back to this thing to that thing. Um, it's the old age old saying, a jack of all trades um, is is really not um, something to aspire to. If you look at some of the best companies in the world, and I use tech companies as an example, Apple, what did they really focus on? It was the design. It was the user experience. Even though they've locked you in this really tight box and everything is expensive, because of how meticulously things were crafted, um, it brought out a whole new segment, a whole new way of thinking. With Google, it was how do we give access to information as quickly as possible? How do we scale that search that you're trying to go through to give you what you need as soon as you can? And after those primary things were met, those primary ideas came through, then they were able to kind of start diversifying more, uh, like for Google, doing Gmail, getting YouTube, all these other things that helped boost, uh, and even some become bigger than the core product. But if you don't have that laser focus on what are our assumptions, how are we validating those assumptions, and that cycle of am I building, am I measuring, am I learning? Um, there will be all sorts of people who have advice, who have ideas, and even your customers, the people who you serve, and learning really how and when to say, no, that's not what we're doing. That's not aligned. We can focus on that at some point, but right now it's just getting this next feature out and making sure that we have all of the flows, all of the patterns, all the understanding from that one person or that group of people. Um, And then with operation and execution insights, there's being relentlessly resourceful. Um, in this new age of AI, we're past the internet or information age. We're now in the augmentation and just AI age. And what this means is the amount of effort that you needed to put into certain things like writing cold emails, scheduling your calendar, um, finding your next customer. We can now use these tools that are not really expensive, or difficult or complicated to solve these problems. Um, with every solution that you guys will go on to create, the unfortunate thing is you create a new problem for yourself to solve. And that problem, again, like we said in the beginning, is really an opportunity. So how do I find what people did, and how do I take that into what I need to do now? One of the kind of values we have is the 2x philosophy, which is any we want to be twice as good as the competition that's doing it. Um, and we don't have the same amount of resources, we don't have the same amount of experience, we don't have the same amount of a yeah, time, and that's studying how did they get there, why did they make the decisions that they made, and really taking that into my context, into my understanding, my market, my customers, my users. Again, I'll just be sharing some resources at the end of this, on YouTube University. That's where I learned most of my things, and books as well on how do you really rely on what others have done, what experiences they have, and help it inform. There's really very few situations where there's no option or no way out. And learning just to be patient, and quiet and still so that you can find that next move and opportunity. Awesome. I actually, Jacob, did you do yeah, get the right people and make sure they don't kind of screw you over or mess you up. Um, I think in the very early stages, the most one of the most important things is to hire very slowly and fire as quickly as possible, um, and only hire where it hurts. In this hiring pattern, and what you're doing is, especially as a founder or somebody who's running a company, um, a majority of your time, um, apart from building the business, should be spent on finding the next piece to the puzzle, to supercharge you to that next stage. When it comes to partners and partner agreements, don't think about just the next 2 months. Don't think about the next 1 year. Think, okay, 10 years from now, um, what could this be worth? What could we be doing? What kind of pain, stress, difficulties will we go through? And how do I incentivize the people who I'm bringing on, while making sure that it is about creating value. It's not about giving gifts or being nice or friendly per se, but incentive, I think is really the important thing. What is my incentive to give my all, my everything to this project, and how do I do that to the with the other people? And then really taking your time to integrate people into the vision, and the culture of this company. Company culture, whether that's just you alone or two people, is really what will determine how you're able to grow, how you're able to face challenges, and difficulty. So I'd say, definitely trial periods, bring people in, for a short period of time, uh, really see how do you guys interact. Not only do they have the hard skills, and the soft skills, but does your culture fit? Are they somebody who you admire, you want to spend more time with, somebody who you feel like you can invest in and invest with? Learning to really understand that and break that down. I think in last year's AYLF a meeting in Kenya, we had one of the guys from Uganda tell us that you're an average of the five people you spend the most time with, and your company and any company is really a collection of people trying to achieve a goal. If you have the right people, the goal doesn't even matter. Um, it can be achieved, but if you have the wrong actors, the wrong attitudes, the wrong hierarchies, then no matter what you try and do, no matter how much money you get into the business, it will fail. So I just say take your time and really invest in the people. We've really seen over the past, I'd say, 4 or 5 years, many of the biggest companies in the world firing upon thousands of people at a time. That's because they got complacent. They got so comfortable with having this headcount, having managers of managers and hiring. Yet also we're seeing teams of 8 to 15 people creating companies that are going to be worth billions of dollars. One of my favorite examples and in building a team and really hiring slow and firing fast is WhatsApp. WhatsApp, when it was at, I think, 30 million customers, had uh, around 8 to 12 employees. That was the entire company end to end. And they managed to completely secure the communications market pretty much for the whole world. And that was because the founders really took their time to find the right talent. They gave them the right incentive. And that's not always cash, because cash is hard to come by. That could be over time, you'll get more shares in this company, even setting aside 10% of your company to give shares to your employees. The first batch of employees is a great way to do that. Awesome. Then we have funding and financial management. This is something that I very much disliked, and was very painful for me for a long time. I barely passed my accounting 101. But really, this is the proof is in the details. The devil is in the details. So I think from day one, um, clean accounting, tracking your expenses and your revenue as closely and as religiously as possible. If that's not your top skill, um, invest time in making it so that you're adequate. Knowing how much money you're spending from the start is crucial, and really making sure that you're able to keep your eyes on everything. We had a situation where our onboarding cost is about $1 per user at the time. And we were kind of onboarding 1,000 users a day. And we did this for about 2 months. I think you guys can do the math on that, but that's around $60,000 worth of spend. And that's something that we weren't necessarily thinking about. We're not focused on the cost of it. We're just focused on getting people in. And that was a very big problem at the time. We had to go renegotiate prices, costings. Um, but if we were more proactive and more clear on actually for every action, for everything that happens, this is the cost that comes to it, and checking that against what we recorded on our financial modeling, on our financial planning, uh, we would have a lot easier of a time. And getting some of your friends, and there are people in this cohort, I believe, who are probably in the AYLF system, who are accountants, who are really just super good with money. If that is a skill that you don't have and it's a detriment, sacrifice and get somebody on that. Even if it's a weekly, hey, I just need an hour of your time to help me go through these um, uh, costs and this revenue every week. I can't really pay you much, but this would just be really helpful, and I'll find a way to help you out and do something that's useful for you. That will save you so much in the future. And then being frugal and realistic. Um, Most startups kind of fail due to running out of money. And one of the advice that we got when we were in Y Combinator, which is an accelerator that had people like Airbnb, like Sam Altman, who did OpenAI, and a bunch of other things, is they said they like um, they like founders who hate spending money, um, really being almost a miser in that aspect. Um, And the way that works is whenever you have your financial model, your financial plan, what you can do is double the costs and half the revenue and see how long will it take to then get to break even. Uh, and it's not saying that you should be pessimistic and not have hope and not have a positive mindset. But being an entrepreneur and having a startup means that you have to hold these conflicting ideas of uh, imminent death and failure and driving and striving for this goal. One of the uh, partners at Y Combinator would tell us, welcome, everyone. You are all dead companies walking. And until you've secured that break even or even profitability, that has to be something that's cognizant in the back of your mind. Um, yeah, and then we'll look at funding paths. So there are a lot of paths that you can go. You can get loans, you can do competitions, you can get grants, you can find people who are affluent to support you with small rounds or small checks, or you can go the VC route and raise a lot of money. Um, I am more and more leaning towards the first, which is bootstrapping, trying to find what's the cheapest way that we can validate these ideas, take our money and reinvest it into the company. And when I have this understanding or when I know how this product works, how the customers work, then going and seeking that funding specifically for a milestone or for a specific item. So I need 1 million shillings to open up a new store. And that new store is going to be in this location and it's going to get these customers. Or I need um, 50K to then buy new stock worth X amount, but the potential value of that stock is going to be 3X or 4X that. Um, Facing funding as a status symbol is something that, especially in, I'd say, 2019 to 2022, especially in Africa, is something a lot of people did, raised uh, millions upon millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, if not more, just to say that you did that. Um, and it is not a means to an end. If you don't have a business, you don't have the funding will only give you a burden, something to carry and something to now have to prove yourself. So with the funding paths, as much as possible, try and reinvest your own profits. You're investing in yourself, you're investing in your team. Find, yeah, competitions or grants that you can uh, push, learn, and potentially get money out. And then, yeah, really look at who is it in my network of people in the AYLF network who have a tie to this item or have a passion for this kind of project. How do I bring them in, explain to them what we're trying to achieve, how we're going to achieve it, and see if I can get a boost that way. but always tying it to a direction or something that you're trying to achieve. Yeah, we're almost coming up to the end, and I want to talk about growth and scale. So earlier we talked about doing things that don't scale. And why you do those things that don't scale is to achieve something called product market fit. This focuses on your customers' needs. This focuses on how quickly you can update or change what you're doing in the business, whether that's a product you have or a service that you're delivering, uh, to really ensure and lock in the fact that this is resonating and this is um, really growing from your users. Your users are going to be uh, your best ideation people, the best people with the best ideas for your company. They're going to be your best marketers. They're going to be really just the lifeblood. So if your users don't love your product, if your retention isn't high, so that's people coming back to buy again or people logging in again. If they're not sharing this thing and actually referring other people to it, and you're not at that point where how much people want the product is pushing you to think, oh, I don't know how I can serve all these people, then you will need to wait and keep figuring it out. That could take a year, that could take 5 years. But really, one of the most dangerous things that companies suffer from is scaling before they're ready. And we've seen this with a lot of startups within Africa and in Kenya. How many Uber competitors have there been since, or Bolt competitors have there been in the past 4 or 5 years who've gone out, gotten a bunch of drivers, a bunch of cars, and within a year, 2 years are gone. They didn't have the product market fit. Um, and once you have that PMF, that product market fit, that's when you can go and get real big funding. You can even go to banks and get equity because you know this is the growth rate that we have. This is the customer segments that we're trying to achieve, trying to get, and trying to push for. Um, that after that point is when you really want to start investing in your marketing and sales. Start optimizing, automating your operations, and hiring to meet your demands. It's now hurting you not having this person. You're losing out business because you don't have a certain skill on the team. And at this point, any person that you're bringing into the team as you're growing quickly or even slowly is should be much better than you at what you're hiring them to do. You don't want to hire people who don't have that capacity to push, to grow, to save you and the company from mistakes that might be made. And at this point is where you really start looking at, okay, what is our market share? We did in that kind of original or basic um, business model, you have to check what's the market, what's the total addressable market. This is that point where you really begin tracking your market share and pushing, okay, we want to get maybe 0.5% of this market in the next year. Then we want to be adding 2, 3, 4% year on year. And that's now how you are able to really push and grow your business because you've changed your thinking from understanding the product and understanding the customer and iterating quickly to, okay, now how do we uh, do those patterns, those processes that we've developed for a new market segment, for a new kind of customer, and really blow up and scale. Um, Staying adaptive is also critical. A story I can give there is when we first hired in 2021, AI wasn't a big thing. It wasn't where it is today. Um, now when we hire, we can't do the same coding tests. We can't give the same kind of projects, take-home projects that we used to. Now we actually need to see how does this person operate in the real world, and focus more on their culture fit. And that means some things seem to slow down. But again, you're investing in a big boost later. So the line won't always be, up and to the right. There's times where it'll dip, and you need to be ready with those processes and those kind of patterns that we discussed earlier, to adapt to change. Again, what are my assumptions? How am I testing them? Uh, how am I measuring them? And what am I learning? And then changing. Um, and then I think another thing, and this is also really important, is advisors. Who are your team of experts, who have industry knowledge, and whether that's managing teams, whether that's specific domain knowledge in what you're working on and where you're focusing, to really help you not make the mistakes or the issues, to challenge your ideas, and to help guide you on that path. If you want to walk fast, you walk alone, but if you want to go far, you go with a team. And that means taking your time to really explain, to think and challenge, and creating that environment. I think that community around you, that helps challenge your thinking and doesn't settle just for okay or good enough. Awesome. So, yeah, I really do hope that this was helpful, that you guys are ready to start or continue your journey. And some things to just remember, time is your friend. We are all young and have a lot of potential. So invest heavily, make that sacrifice now and delay that gratification. And I promise you it will pay off in the future. Learn by doing. Ideas are fantastic, and how you formulate your ideas is very important. But if you're not acting, if you're not in motion, it's worthless. Failure, and this is failure with air quotes, is equal to learning if you have the right mindset. As long as you're still standing, you're still there, then you truly haven't failed. Your community is your standard. They say, yeah, when push comes to shove, when your back is against a corner, you don't necessarily rise to the highest level all the time. More often than not, you'll fall to the standard of your environment, or fall to the standard of your training. And yeah, your journey, it begins now. It's every moment, every second, every minute. And I know there's a breakout session after this. So there are some questions. I'll see how I can get this shared to you guys, that you can just go through and think about. Um, but yeah, I'll pass it back to Machango. I think we have like 15 minutes, and see if there's any questions. Thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble for about an hour, and really excited to see where cohort 11 goes in the future.